Action.
Episode 8, Part 3, Unexpected Consequences, beginning with the National Weather Service.
Well, okay, so I wouldn't say unexpected.
Well, okay, maybe that's a disingenuous.
How about consequences of?
Right, disingenuous.
What we're talking about is defunding all these services. Not just taking, eliminating, certain jobs from like the IRS and things like that can cause disasters and all these other things that are probably going to economically. But this is stuff that's like makes no sense whatsoever. Like this is going to cause death and destruction.
Yeah, and it already has.
From
the looks of it. So there have been recent tornadoes. The National Weather Association, the jobs were all but eliminated, and the end result being that the people didn't get the warnings that they normally would have gotten about getting out of the way of some of these storms. Now, in many cases, people are used to getting warnings, sometimes within only 5-10 minutes, an hour of these storms, and so they have to act on these warnings like really fast. So even if they got in a warning, if they got in it late, that would have been almost as bad as not getting it at all. But they didn't get anything, and so what was it? 35 people, I want to say. I don't know where I got that number.
That number sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyways, but there were quantifiable people that
we probably should do some research.
Were left in the eye of the storm because of the lack of warning, and then on top of that, FEMA has been gutted. So the people that had their houses, destroyed, etc., that normally would be, campaigning FEMA saying, hey, can we get a little bit of help, a little bit of money, people, whatever. It's not that FEMA's saying no, it's basically the organization hasn't responded at all. From what I've heard, it doesn't exist anymore. It's not officially been removed, but there's so many people that were there before that their jobs are gone that it might as well be
function.
It can't function, yeah.
So, this goes back to Doge even and like what they were doing. And so I think, like I said, two things going on. One was to dismantle U.S. government, and the other is to get a bunch of data. And they didn't care about like legitimately finding fraud because there was already people in place, and the fraud was them. The fraud was Trump and Musk and these other assholes. They're really the fraud. So they just cut everything, and they don't care what the consequences are. And they'll try to worm their way out of it one way or another. But this makes no sense. This can't make sense to anybody. I mean, some of these agencies, they need more, not less. They need more people. They need more help. They need better organization. To cut it, it's ludicrous. Like, if none of this makes sense, then people are going to die. So, can you prove it? Can you prove it and say, this is the, causation and, factor? Maybe not because it's it's a disaster and people die in disasters. So can I say, well, if they were warned, they wouldn't have died? No, I can't. But let's just be fucking reasonable here. It can't help. It would have helped probably. It can't hurt, is what I'm trying to say. It can't hurt.
I wouldn't go so far as to say everybody would have been saved, but I might go so far as to say somebody else would have been saved that wasn't saved.
Possibly. I mean, we don't. But the thing is, it wouldn't have hurt.
Correct. It certainly
and it would have been
it would have helped the situation.
It would have been the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah. The effort would have been in the right direction.
I prove
it could have only helped at this.
Right. Can I prove that? No, I can't prove what's going to happen. But I can give you a general idea that if I do this, this is what will happen. You're pretty accurate in that. Most of the time, that's the scientific method, and then you repeat it, and then you're like, oh, if I do this, this is what's going to happen next. And we pretty much know that when you cut this stuff, people are going to die, so it's not a stretch, man. So maybe, probably could have saved some lives. They didn't cut this stuff, Now, do we know all the like I said, that doesn't matter. The whole thing is about the premise. The premise is you shouldn't be doing that shit. We should be fucking beefing that shit up, not cutting it. But like I said, they don't care. They don't care. They don't want the government involved in anything. Except for,
Except as it said in the very last video, the reason why government, well, not the only reason, but one of the reasons government exists is because your individual city, state, your individual family, your individual whatever is not big enough, does not have the resources to handle some of these problems.
Right. Yeah. But they don't think beyond that. They don't think past that.
I think the phrase "they don't think" kind of sums it up pretty well. Yeah.
Like, anytime you start to question, it just they can't give you a straight answer that makes any sense, and you just don't know what to do. So we were going to talk about that. And then what was the next thing? So,
Well, the FAA and
oh yeah, so and then I'm hearing again because we had a conversation earlier about air traffic controllers, and there was a guy on TikTok, and he was an air traffic controller, is currently it seems, and he's just saying it's a disaster and they need more people. And I think when we summed it up, we said we don't know exactly what's going on, but it sounds like they need more people.
yeah, and I think it's a similar thing where is every single plane accident that happens traceable to what they've done to the FAA? No, I'm not gonna say that, but it does seem like it's gone up significantly since they did this, and that logically there's a connection.
Well, he cited some examples that he was privy to in Newark and New York that were stunning, and he said this has happened in the last 6 months or so, or whatever, how long?
Yeah.
Since all this stuff went down, and he said this doesn't happen this often in the past, and all this stuff happened, and for one, I think there was a period of time for almost 8 to 10 minutes they had no contact with any planes, so they could have ran into each other, they couldn't land, they couldn't do shit, and he said it's a direct result of, according to him, it was a direct result of being understaffed.
Well, and then some of the things going on at Boeing don't help either. I mean, they've been somehow they've been having planes go out the door with defects that under other circumstances would have been triple checked for, and
right, because they're cutting all this, they're putting in things too to cut the regulation, because I mean their argument always, all this red tape, all this red tape, that's why we can't get anything done.
Oh, the phrase somebody used the other day was that red tape, I mean it's not literally but figuratively it's red from blood, meaning that you have a lot of areas you only have a regulation if somebody died or got a limb cut off.
Wow.
Because of something that went wrong, and so then they felt they had to make a law about it. In other words, it is so difficult to pass laws that look like regulation that they only get passed if enough people suffer.
Right. Look, in most cases, it's across the board, because sometimes people make dumb decisions. People put in operational procedures and legislations and things like this to regulate out of safety reasons and concerns and just to make things more efficient. Sometimes they're stupid and they're making things less efficient, but that's why you have to have a committee and people involved that understand and that are smart. And if you get people in that are creating operational procedures and laws that are dumb and then just completely won't listen to anybody else and demand that you do things in a certain way. Yeah, I've worked in places that are completely ridiculous with some of the shit you got to do, and you can't tell them otherwise because they won't listen. But in general,
even in those cases, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, the regulations that you have at their worst are still better than not having anything.
That was going to be my point. But there has to be something in place. It's better than nothing. Chaos. Something is better than nothing in a lot of cases. Maybe you just need to tweak it. And when I have things going, in what I do, I'm always constantly not only tweaking but leaving room to be flexible. Okay, under these, but if you have to, and then hopefully the people under you have some discernment, and you get the right people.
Well, and some of it's not just discernment, though. Some of it is, if your day is busy enough and you're under enough stress, you're going to do whatever you're being told to do and not think twice about it, no matter how dumb it feels. Whereas, if things are a little bit freer, then you might go, oh, now I can think around what I think the purpose of this is or whatever.
A little bit of flexibility.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and not everything is so cut and dry. You hire the wrong people and that can go haywire too. Because they just make stupid decisions. Then you got to crack down and be like, okay, do it like this.
But again, unfortunately, that's not restricted to just public, just private, just whatever.
Or you can even do it on a case-by-case basis and be like, hey, look, let this guy do what he wants, but this guy, you got to fucking look at, He's not going to do it right. He makes bad decisions all day long.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, you get my point.
Yes.
When you're doing those kind of things, you want to make it so that it's being efficient and it's helping and it's creating safety, and you don't want to go beyond that. And you want to make it flexible so that people aren't getting hamstrung and they can't get their job done. So there's a fine line there. There's a balance. And people are going to argue about what's right, Like, I can't do it if I do this. And then the other guy's saying, well, if you don't do that, I can't do this. And you need to have these discussions and come up with a good idea, right? But just to say, well, I don't like it because it's costing me money, that's not good enough. Like, we can't get this done, man. Well, I don't want to put out a crappy car of rockets that blow up every other time, like Musk.
Or remove seatbelts from all your...
Right, I could do this cheaper, right?
Yeah.
You could do it cheaper and half your rockets fail and you still haven't gotten to the moon and you're an idiot. And everything you promised you didn't do because you want to cut corners on everything in life, including this. NASA got to the moon. You can't because you want to cut corners and you think everything's cheap and you think, come on, man, he's an idiot. So...
when the richest man in the world wants to cut corners,
it's like, dude, there's a reason. There's a reason.
Because that's not how he got rich.
He got
either,
the
right?
rocket to land on the pad. Yeah, whoop-de-doo. NASA probably could have done it too. Like, whatever. So, and they probably getting the technology.
The only reason why the women that went up into space was a big deal is because they went up into space and they came back down alive. Okay, let's be honest.
Yeah, but that was what's his name?
Yeah, that was Bezos. But that's my point. Is the only reason why that looked like it was anything is Musk hasn't been able to get a human being up into space, ever.
I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah,
it's all a joke. So, yeah, cutting this stuff, cutting the red tape, as they say, creates blood. The red tape was red because of blood. Now you cut it. Now there's going to be.
But ignoring that, let's look at the actual savings. They can't find any savings.
There's no savings.
There is no savings.
Not saving anything.
Like okay.
This is going to cost money.
Yeah.
This is going to cost insurance people money. It's going to cost lives. Everything they do is the reverse effect of what they're starting to say they're going to do. And the only people they do is line their own pockets at the end of the day. They're so full of shit. So, I mean, can you think of any other examples, or can we wrap this up?
I think we could wrap this one up.
Yeah, so the point being is, these things are in place for a reason. These institutions are in place for a reason. Can they be tweaked and modified and done more efficiently? All the time, there's ways to do things better. But don't listen to these idiots, because they're going to kill you.